SARA REISMAN, welcome to 7 Minutes.
Thank you. Nomi Lev, thank you for inviting me.
We're very happy to have you here. You offered to present a show that took place at the 8th floor. Do you want to tell us about the show?
Sure. The exhibition was first staged at La Mama, La Galleria, which is adjacent to La Mama, the theater in the East Village. And that exhibition began as a collaboration with a friend named Ian Daniel, who works in film and television. So the show was called Still Out, and it's based on writing by Andre Lepecki, or his proposition, like what happens when a performance artist slows down or stops. What is the political potential that opens up in that kind of subtle resistance? And for some reason, this has continued to engage me. And then a friend, Yaro Varga, who's like a longtime collaborator, was the artistic director at Meat Factory, which is a gallery space in Prague. And in the frame of this exhibition, in its three iterations, this is the second iteration in 2016, there are a number of works that touch on different like examples of stopping, slowing down, resisting, turning away. Over here we see three prints, photographic prints of an artist named Kirsten Justesen. And the pedestal piece, it's her pressing her body against ice in a kind of ice cave. And she's been doing these melting performances since, I want to say, since the 70s or 80s. Claudia Jesuits is an artist originally from Bolivia. And this is just an installation view of her film Sympathy for the Devil, which is a 2-channel video that reflects on a common phenomenon in Latin America where a lot of Jews had, sought refuge after World War II, after, escaping the Holocaust. And this film is based on a daily occurrence. It's like an anecdote that her relative told her about encountering somebody in the elevator on a daily basis. And it happened to be that his neighbor was Klaus Barbie, who was nicknamed the Butcher of Lyon. So he escaped Europe and went to Latin America as well. So the two of them lived on 2 floors near each other and would see each other in the elevator every day. And so the video is shot as it's a panning shot. You just see, a slow kind of move between the interface, the moment in the elevator, and then the two, one above the other in the building, living parallel lives. If in another circumstance, somebody might say, I know what you did, right? But they never spoke. They just lived quietly near each other. I was coming back from Prague. Colleagues of mine at the Rubin Foundation suggested, why don't we do that show for the fall show? I was encouraged to include some of the artists who I thought were very fundamental to the premise of this stopping as a form of resistance and performance. So Kirsten Justesen, you saw her work, the pedestal piece. This is an earlier work called Sculpture Number 2. And it's a photographic sculpture, so it's her inside of a box. In talking to her, what I remember was her expressing the frustration of being a sculptor in the 60s and the expectation, like different expectations for how women's work would materialize or be visible. Clifford Owen's anthology, which is his project that he did, culminated in 2011 with a solo exhibition at PS1. And there were a series, he invited 26 artists of color to give him performance scores that he would then act out. So this is the performance score that William Pope L assigned him. Yoko Inue's Transmigration of the Soul is a piece that began in 2006. And she had sweaters made in Guatemala and then unraveled them in a performance on Canal Street. And it was started in 2006, partly in response to some of the dynamics of the area after September 11th. She was interested in highlighting that experience. And what she described in performing this piece was that here she is, amongst a kind of souvenir display on Canal Street. People would walk up and they're like, but what are you selling? Like there was this kind of constant pressure to understand what she was selling. And Nauman's work, that this dance or exercise on the perimeter of a square dance, Nauman goes around the edge of the circle in the studio. And so to me, it's like the least political artwork in the show. There's something about the kind of the potential of taking something very formal, very just ritual, and working with it over time, and that seeing where the meaning can be found. And then we had several prints produced by Carlos Martial, based on performances that he had staged in the past. A lot of his work is endurance based. This was the proposal he made for the show. And he said, "This is what I want to do. It's a proposal for a work called Maze." He was to stand in the middle of it. And then 2 art handlers, and he specified that they should be white, would build walls around the swastika, making it 3-dimensional upward. So as you can see, they're starting to build out a kind of structure following the edges of the swastika structure. Now, he was trying to draw this in connection with policies of incarceration and the proportion of people who are incarcerated in this country, the large proportion being African American, Latin American men, and their invisibility once inside its prison or in the cell. And so at the end, he's inside of this. There are these openings on the sides, so you can kind of see the shadow of his body. And we probably had like 60 or 70 people at the event, but they understood the meaning of it. Why would we stage this? Why would an artist do this? Why would he put himself in this piece this way? So the idea was, once all the walls of the penitentiary structure were up, because the swastika actually loosely references the architecture of a penitentiary, thinking about how do we gather in public spaces. For me, what was worrisome with the shelter-in-place orders when it started was to think, okay, so we're coming on an election and we are being ordered to stay home. What does that mean in terms of, obviously voting is a question mark, right? Like, when will that happen? Will we be able to go to the poll centers, or will we do mail, by what means will we vote? But also the idea that being told to maintain distance means like congregating in public space, which is considered, or historically has been, like one of the primary ways that activism happens or demonstrations happen. Protest. If you can't gather, what does protest look like? And I think there is, protests can be spaced out according to the social distancing guidelines, but there is this sense of like, okay, so there have to be other ways that we can resist. I also think that the healthcare crisis we're looking at in the United States really, I hope that it forces a real reckoning with how this country is governed, what does equity look like? I think it's time, and I think we have time to think about it, and we have time to like connect with people about it. So that's what I'm hopeful for.